We are, of course, talking... Well, there's a lot to talk about in terms of immigration. Immigration officers prompted by a great investigation by The Sun. I mean, this was proper journalism here. It's great to see this. It's a story that should never be left alone. The Sun have picked up on it and found the best way in, seemingly cracking down on illegal delivery drivers by seizing bikes. This is immigration officers seizing bikes and phones. Nationals from Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan paid for delivery accounts via social media and worked from asylum accommodations. Despite being prohibited, of course, from employment, delivery platforms have pledged stricter facial recognition checks, and the government is planning increased enforcement, including raids. Is this another case of broken borders? And who best to talk to? The Sun's political editor, Jack Elsom, is with us. Jack, good to see you.
Good to see you, Ian.
Listen, I mean, this is... I saw you nodding along. I know you can say, oh, well, this is my patch, it's The Sun. You know, and we're part of a sort of family here. But genuinely, I mean, this is how journalism should work. Mm-hmm. And with in the absence as well of anyone really getting to the hub of a story like this, what better way to do it than... And this is in the DNA of The Sun, isn't it?
It is a good, old-fashioned, nitty-gritty, investigative piece of journalism.
Exactly.
And it's one of these things where I think everyone sort of suspected for a while that this might be going on. You know, the other day, me and my girlfriend were ordering a takeaway off Deliveroo, and someone called Megan was meant to come and pick it up, and then a bearded bloke came and dropped off the order, and so everyone sort of suspected that something like this was happening.
Yeah.
But the actual scale and speed of which anyone really coming across the channel can very quickly set up an account with one of these takeaway companies, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats, be able to basically bypass any sort of verification technology they claim to have, and then illegally work in this country. And that is bad. One, because it's a massive pull factor for people coming across the channel if they think they can just work for takeaway companies very easily.
Yeah.
But also, it is such a slap in the chops to millions of taxpayers out there, because not only are these people living on taxpayer handouts and in hotels, but then earning extra cash on the side by doing these jobs. And finally, this investigation has actually prompted the government to get their asses into gear, and now we're going out and authorities are nicking these people.
And what I find strange about this is that these disruptor companies, as they're called, it's not a pejorative, you know, they are Uber, Deliveroo, you know, the biggest food company in the world, don't have any food. Biggest taxi company in the world, don't own any taxis. Biggest accommodation company in the world, don't own any hotels. This is the new world we live in. And one of the things, of course, that attracted people to it was the amazing technology of how, you know, you press a button on your phone and a flipping car arrives. I mean, how the heck is that? Had somebody told you that 20 years ago, you'd think they were a witch or something similar. And now they'll deliver the food to your house. This is incredible. Best technology money can buy. But not good enough to stop a dodgepot or an illegal person working for them. I mean, surely they must...
Yeah.
Some board meeting, this must have come up at least in any other business.
And these companies are worth billions of pounds.
Hundreds.
I mean, Will Shue, I can't remember how much he sold Deliveroo for, but it was, you know, enough to buy a small army.
Yeah.
But the fact that they couldn't strengthen their security, procedures to a point where anyone could turn up in the middle of the night to someone's house and, you know, operate in this sort of illegal criminal racket is absolutely extraordinary. And it seems like, from my conversations, that the dressing down they got yesterday by ministers in the Home Office was pretty robust indeed. And as a result of that meeting, I think really as a result of the Sun's campaigning, because if we hadn't been exposing this in the front page day after day, let's be honest, they wouldn't have been hauled in there with quite the haste that they were. They have now agreed within 90 days to ramp up their security procedures so that they are doing facial recognition on a daily basis rather than a monthly basis. So that is a clear victory, although the proof will be in the pudding about whether this actually happens. Because,
indeed.
You know, I'm sure, despite the fact that immigration enforcement went out yesterday and started nicking people at the Thistle Barbican, one of the massive migrant hubs in the UK, I'm sure that we are still going to get on the streets today hundreds, thousands more small boat crossers coming in Deliveroo. And so it needs to be a consistent thing now. It can't just be a one-off to try and placate people and hope this goes away. It needs to be a proper, routine mission to try and stop this scandal.
Indeed. Just to pick you up on a couple of things here, Jack, I think it's only reasonable. You mentioned that Megan was meant to be delivering your food and a fellow with a beard turned up. I'm just saying, gender transitions are possible.
that is very true. It is 2020. It is 2025.
It is indeed. You know,
yeah, you are right. I'm sorry. How ignorant of me.
The fella with the beard and the deep voice was actually Meghan. And the other thing, what I loved about the Sun piece is that what the piece we were showing, going to somebody's house, the woman ordered a wimpy.
Yeah.
Now,
do Wimpy still exist?
Well, that's exactly what everybody was going.
Really? Wimpy these
Not
days.
only do they exist, they're available clearly on Deliveroo or Just Eat.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that is news to me.
That is, yeah.
I used to love Wimpy. We used to, on my small town in the Isle of Wight, there was a Wimpy back then. We didn't even have a McDonald's. So a Wimpy does still hold like a good place in my heart, but I didn't think...
I think we
I've
all
not seen
have
one
that
for
memory.
years.
No, I think they exist in very small numbers, and there's no consistency. They're just one walk. You'll walk past a random high street and go, "There's a Wimpy!" And it's like everybody will have the same reaction when they see the Wimpy. And all the Knickerbocker glories was their speciality, and they sold the most unlikely, main, which you can only imagine the giggles of schoolboys, a Bender and chips. Which is one of those
stated without comment.
Indeed, one of those curved sausages in a bun. It was fabulous.
Oh, wow, there we go.
There you go. I'm going to check on my app to see if it's available tonight. Sticking with the issue of channel migrants, we also see this story of migrants being offered free eye test prescriptions, dental treatment, glasses, and even wigs on the NHS. Now, when you think this story cannot get any more, I'm tempted to say laughable, but that underplays it. I mean, this is a serious misuse of lots of taxpayers' money. We know about the hotels, £7-8 million a day, multi-billion pound over the years, and now we're hearing about the health benefits of being an illegal migrant, which is amazing considering we've got a big old waiting list of people who can't get their own treatment.
I think it's just one of these things where Brits in this country currently feel like they're being taken for an absolute ride.
Yeah.
And you're right, we have a waiting list which is about 7 million. Right, people that can't get operations or, sort of like classic, run-of-the-mill treatments. And then they see stories like this, which is that if you break into this country illegally, not only do you get bed and board, not only do you get handouts and living in a hotel and the rest of it, but also you get things which people who have paid into the system all their life here can't get very easily. And you can get the fact that a small boat migrant get a wig on the NHS. People just think this country is an absolute joke at the moment.
The wig? What's that? I mean, is this meant to be you've got some kind of alopecia thing going on? And you say,
I don't know.
I get a wig, I get a job.
I don't know. You
drag thing. Who knows?
You can only, the imagination runs wild, doesn't it? But with these sorts of stories, and we have them day after day. They're not in isolation now. People aren't even surprised at these stories anymore. But what it does is feed into this entire sense that Britain is broken in a way that is just totally ludicrous, and it's just a kick in the proverbials to everyone here who's actually managed to pay into this in their entire life. And these stories just feed into that sense. And I think the government now have a real problem in their hands, because they can say that they're doing this crackdown and that crackdown in terms of trying to stop the boats, but people now have their fingers in their ears because it all just seems hollow. And it's not just Labour. The Tories for 14 years said they were going to stop this stuff, and they're still happening. And it is just a system which has been infested with this kind of sort of handout culture. Britain's back of the queue, and everyone else come in, and that's what really frustrates people. It frustrates 100%. Readers the whole time. You probably get it more than anything else. Just the sense that the entire country is not working for people here.
Yeah, get yourself a wig, get a job at Deliveroo, call yourself Meghan, deliver Jack's food. You see, that's how it works.
Exactly.
It's simple. And just to compound this, Jack, I mean, we're regularly told, some of the most vulnerable people on planet Earth. I remember, I don't know if you're still around, that journalist called Owen Jones, the boy Jones, years ago, who said, these are the most vulnerable people on Earth. And lots of journalists I know have been out there to France and covered stories for Channel 4 and goodness knows where else. And they've not really found that to be clearly coming from countries that, you or I wouldn't want to live in. Don't blame them for wanting to leg it, but certainly not all escaping a tyrannical regime or a war zone. And some coming, because they want to get a job here, whatever. And some, as we've now established, clearly do. But it doesn't make it any better when we see these images of migrants celebrating, taking selfies of themselves on board a dinghy over the last few days, dodging the French police, and pretty much saying, we're coming. That's not really the spirit of... It doesn't really smack of vulnerability.
No, totally not. And I think it basically illustrates what most British people think all the time, which is that actually the majority of these people are economic migrants, and that France is a safe country. And if you are what you say you are, an asylum seeker fleeing a war-torn regime or persecution somewhere, then France is a perfectly safe place with liberal democracy and laws where you can claim asylum.
And all the other countries you came through along the way.
And all the ones in the migrant route, through Germany, Poland, whatever.
Yeah.
If you were a genuine asylum seeker and you didn't just want to basically work in Britain's black market and be a beneficiary of all the pull factors we have here, then why are you coming? And I think that, to a point you said, Britain is actually a very, very compassionate country, and we have a long history of taking in people that genuinely need sanctuary and refuge. But there is an overwhelming sense in this country now that when you see young lads, and they are, despite what Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, says, almost all sort of young men of fighting age, it is clear that a lot of them are just coming to work in the economy. And like you said, you can't begrudge anyone for wanting a better life, but there is a system and legal routes. If you want to come here and work, you can get a work visa, rather than just coming on a small boat, which you are risking your life, by the way. It is not compassionate or liberal to prolong a practice where people get into incredibly overcrowded boats and die in the Channel, as they do every single month. It is not compassionate at all. And so, someone taking a selfie as they're coming across is basically just one massive slap in the face to millions of British people.
But Keir Starmer's got it sorted, because first he was going to smash the gangs, didn't really smash any gangs, so that didn't quite work. Now it's the one in, one out policy, which might be coming our way, which I don't think is really going to appease. Well, it's certainly not going to appease people who have a concern over numbers of migrants coming to the country. But apparently you get a better type of migrant come, as one person put it.
Well, it does seem the strategy has shifted now, as I think we all thought it would do, because Keir Starmer, when he first came in and during the election, said that smashing the gangs was their modus operandi, and they were basically putting all their eggs in one basket. They got rid of the Rwanda plan, which many saw as a viable deterrent. Questions about the scale, I think, probably fair enough, but people saw it as some sort of deterrent anyway. But if you just go to a case of smashing the gangs, and listen, I think that Keir Starmer, to his credit, genuinely just loathed these gangs, and I don't doubt that he wanted to smash them, but he's finding it incredibly difficult, and that's because gangs are incredibly sophisticated.
Yes, like drugs gangs. Nobody smashed them.
Billions of pounds have been poured into tackling drugs gangs for decades, and it is still as easy as it is now to get a bag of weed in the street corner than it ever has been.
Correct.
And so the idea that these gangs won't just adapt if there's a market for their evil trade is for the birds, because they will. And even today at number 10 suddenly admitted that actually, it's not, I think their words were, it's not as simple as we first thought, I think, smashing the gang. They said something like, it's not as easy, it's not as simple, some sort of variation of that. And so now they're having to sort of look at other options, and we have this big summit coming up in a few days' time with Emmanuel Macron. He's coming over to Britain for this UK-French summit, in which migration is going to be top of the agenda. Whether we get this one in, one out deal at the time, I think it's probably quite likely. But as you said, whether that actually remains to be seen, whether that's actually going to be able to have any effect on the gangs. It might hurt the business model a little bit if people think they're going to get sent straight back. But if I'm honest, I don't have all that faith in Emmanuel Macron at the moment to actually want to do that.
No, I don't sense that this is, when Macron goes into work of a Monday morning, I don't think this is number one on the agenda, is it?
No, I don't think it is, because I think that
the Élysée Palace.
He could have done it very easily now, because I think it's genuinely in his interest to stop this, because then people wouldn't be flocking to the northern shores of France.
Yeah, 100%.
But if he was genuinely interested in doing it, then why hasn't he done it already? Because he could easily just take migrants back if he wanted to, and then, strike a deal with another country.
And we give him £500 million, Jack, already, each year.
We've given him £500,000 over a 3-year deal. At the moment, most British people, I think, we're not getting bang for our buck at all. They finally seem to have actually, started doing stuff on the beaches, but the migrants are still getting through. And I think last week, we get the figures now for the prevention stats, and last week the French police stopped a third of people coming across. A third for £500 million? Most people don't think that's good. And also, the ones they do stop, they're not detained. No. They're not putting that detention centre, which, by the way, we were promised as part of this deal. They're sent back into the camps in Calais, and then they can have another crack at it.
And do whatever they want.
Exactly. So actually those prevention stats are warped in themselves. And so I think it's a massive crisis now. Keir Starmer at the moment is not stopping them. It is getting much worse. Whether or not there's any sort of breakthrough in this UK-French summit next week, Who knows? But at the moment, we can't give them any more money because at the moment it seems that all the millions of pounds we've given them so far have just gone to the wall.
It is nice to finish on a lighter note, Jack. It seems we've started something called Wimpy Watch. I'm here to tell you that Simon tells us there is still the original Wimpy in Woolwich. If you ever over there in Woolwich, down there. There used to be one in Roman Road when I lived in East London at the top end. I don't know if that's still there.
Maybe that could be a New Sun campaign, a Wimpy Watch, or at least maybe some big feature. You know, where are the Wimpies now?
Because there used to be the little fellow in the Beefeater kind of logo. Was that the Wimpy?
You're testing me now. I don't know.
Is it? Was he the Wimpy guy? Who was the Wimpy lad? I don't know, but there's definitely a feature in it, Jack.
OK, well, I'll pass that back.
Forget
to
all
my
this
bosses
Parliament stuff you're doing
exactly.
these days.
None of that nonsense, welfare rebellions and the rest of it.
No.
Wimpy.
Wimpy Watch, that's what we need. Get Thomas out there on a bike. Listen, good to see you, Jack. Thank you very much indeed. Jack Elson with us here on the programme. Jack, of course, is the political editor at The Sun.